Joining us, MS Now senior investigative reporter Carol Leonnig, MS Now senior congressional reporter and host of Way Too Early, Ali Vitale. MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin is with us, staff writer for The Atlantic, and MS Now political analyst Ashley Parker, senior writer at The Dispatch, and MS Now contributor David Drucker, New York Times reporter covering the DOJ and FBI Glenn Thrush, and former U.S. attorney, former DOJ official in the Bush and Obama administrations, and partner at Brownstein LLP, Greg Brower. All right, Ali Vitale, I will start with you. And I do want to start with what the victims who were there today, the Epstein survivors who showed up today, what they were hoping for and whether they believe they got it.
I think you're centering the right thing here, Katie, because as I've been watching these hours of testimony, we've seen lawmakers at various points laugh either out of incredulity or some other reason. And I do think that the reality TV vibe of this hearing would have been funny if the topics and the subject matter weren't so direly serious. And I think in my conversations with the survivors, certainly they've come up here to Capitol Hill many times now to advocate for transparency, to advocate for justice, and to hear their trauma be validated by the very person at the DOJ who is in charge of releasing the files in full by law. And yet we are now in this place where they feel that they have been completely ignored. At times during that hearing, Pam Bondi was asked to turn around and speak directly to them, apologize to them. She declined to do that. And I was talking to one of the survivors, Danielle Bensky, about how this hearing has felt for her. I just want to play for you part of our conversation.
It shouldn't be partisan at all, and it's something that we've been saying. We've been taking meetings with everybody we possibly can on both sides of the aisle. We've seen people cross the aisle. The Transparency Act is a law now. They work together on that, and so I think our plea has always been, don't let this be about politics. Please keep this personal and make it personal for your story. We all know survivors, right? Unfortunately, we know the statistic is 1 in 4 women have been abused, and there are men who have been abused as well. So you're talking about a huge percentage in our country. And so to just not even acknowledge survivors is just, I mean, it's beyond disheartening and a slap in the face.
You can hear that disheartening, a slap in the face. These are the women who, at this juncture, are getting more transparency than they've ever gotten, and yet it is still so hard fought, and it is far from being enough. I was just talking with one of the people who works with these women, saying that this is a hearing that they are hoping to have more of because they feel they need to keep peeling back the layers, and because they now have more information public than ever before, they are only going to continue beating that drum for transparency. And I think what's so stunning to them, and frankly, those of us on Capitol Hill, and I said this to her, we're used to things falling along partisan lines up here, but it just feels like this is an issue where it really should be different. Sex trafficking doesn't have a party affiliation. And I think all of us can agree that this is one of the worst things in society, something that all of us could unite against. And yet we're seeing these typical partisan lines continue to be drawn. And it's so disheartening for them here in this hearing and more broadly in this larger landscape.
Yeah, Danny Bensky said this morning, this time it isn't a monster doing the exploiting, it's our own government. Glenn Thrush, why did the Attorney General not come prepared to talk about Epstein?
She didn't come prepared to talk about anything. I mean, I think she came prepared to deal with what she viewed as an optics issue, a political problem, and I think you hit the nail right on the head in your introduction. She has been on shaky ground with Trump. Frankly, if you didn't have to confirm a new attorney general, she probably would not have survived her initial bungling of the Epstein files, but there you have it. But the basic thing that I find most interesting as we move beyond Epstein is yesterday, myself and my colleagues broke a story about about a grand jury in Washington, D.C., rejecting the Justice Department's attempts to indict 6 Democratic lawmakers for essentially expressing their First Amendment right to dissent against Trump administration policy. Wasn't much asked about that. I think what we saw demonstrated today is the extent to which this monster Epstein has created a second monster, this political beast that is devouring everything in the department, and frankly has become the central focus of the Democrats. I think they are making a calculation whether or not it's wise or not, that this is the issue that is most going to resonate with the American people. And I was just struck, as someone who covers this department and was looking forward to several hours of her answering questions, the extent to which we didn't really get into much else. Yes, there was some tangential discussions, but there are so many enormous changes that are going on at the department. The prosecution of Trump's enemies, the dropping of cases against people he's allied with, the Minnesota issue. It's a very, very, just as a consumer of this stuff, as a citizen and as a reporter, I'm just very disappointed by the level of the discourse.
Yeah, at one point she did even say, she put that help wanted sign out front and center saying, if you are a qualified lawyer, please do apply for a job at the Department of Justice. I mean, this mirrors, Glenn, what we saw just the other day from a former DOJ staffer official, which was then retweeted by Stephen Miller. Please apply. Why are they having such a hard time filling these positions?
Because, and I think you saw it here, and again, this gets sort of to the contradiction between Bondi's public image that she's seeking to portray and the way that she's behaving internally. She's very tough in front of Democrats. This is probably her best face in terms of her combativeness and her public relations capacities. But internally, she has put up no resistance whatsoever to Trump edicts. There was a very important line of questioning earlier on about how she was essentially ordered to prosecute Letitia James and Comey, and she didn't push back. And it is that lack of pushback, the sense that the Justice Department now is just an extension of the White House, that is dissuading all of these platinum-level law school graduates and attorneys who want to serve the public interest from showing up at the Justice Department and replacing the hundreds of people who have fled since Trump took office.
All right, Glenn, I know you got to run. Thank you so much for joining us and for sticking around through all that testimony. I appreciate it. Lisa Rubin, let's talk about the burn books that she brought, the strategy that she employed. We had seen it before when she was in front of the Senate last year. And it was surprising at the time, but these lawmakers were prepared for it, and they cut her off pretty quickly. That being said, what have we learned about what might be in those books? I know a couple of still photographers were able to grab still frames, including this one,
yes.
A close-up of something regarding Pramila Jayapal, who was one of the first people to ask her questions. What is it?
Well, first of all, let's credit our colleague Fallon Gallagher, who found this as we were discussing. A number of us have been discussing Bondi's use of these so-called burn books. The image that you're looking at right there shows on the inside front cover of that binder a one-page sheet that at the top says Jayapal Pramila search history. And then it lists a number of things that are EFTA, stands for Epstein Files Transparency Act, and a bunch of numbers after that. I can tell you from experience, that is how the Epstein files have been produced in the Department of Justice's library. And then there are summaries of each of those documents, including one summary that hasn't been unredacted yet, but they are telling Pam Bondi, whoever prepared this document, who is in a particular exchange about a torture video. The image at the very bottom is, instead of summarizing a document, they are giving her the visual. It appears to be a web of potential actors in an investigation prepared by the FBI. You can see a number of faces have been redacted in that. Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein appear in that as well. But let's go back to the fact that it says Jayapal Pramila search history. Congresswoman Jayapal has told the public that yesterday she went to the Department of Justice to take them up on their offer to view unredacted documents. We know that there are 3 or 4 monitors there where members can come in from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and look at some of the documents that are in the Epstein Files library in their unredacted form. We don't know whether this correlates to her search history, but one possibility is that the Department of Justice can look to see how Congresswoman Jayapal, having some sort of username, what her search history was with respect to it, and be prepared to address questions about what she saw in those files, in addition to any other quote-unquote opposition research that the Attorney General had on her.
So it would be a fair question to ask DOJ whether they're surveilling individual lawmakers and their searches?
I think it's a fair question to ask. Are you keeping tabs on what the members are searching?
What they might want to ask her about.
And clearly, for the security of the unredacted files, it's not unreasonable for the department to have usernames and passwords for members. Remember, only members can go in and do this exercise, so they should have those records. The question is, have they put those records to a permissible use?
Yeah, but why would she print out a record of it?